All right. Welcome, everybody, to today's PatternFly community meeting. I am Nicole Thane, and I'm very excited about a rather packed lineup we have planned for you today. Before we dive right into it, I'll just let you all know, I'll show you the lineup, and I'll let you all know that PatternFly does have an email mailing list. And later today, I'll be sending out a PDF of all the slides and YouTube recording of this meeting via the mailing list. I've put a link to join the mailing list in the chat, as well as a link to today's agenda and the slides for today's presentation. Definitely join the list if you haven't. It's also where we send out quarterly newsletters and other special communications. Also, I will be rather impressed if we have enough time for live questions and answers at the end of the call, so feel free to post any questions in the chat throughout the meeting if you have any. All right, so without further ado, we will efficiently jump right into the agenda, and I'll hand the stage over to Alana and Kevin.
Thanks, Nicole. Hi, everyone. So Kevin and I just wanted to give a brief informal update about what's going on with our streamlining PatternFly design documentation effort. So far we've been meeting with downstream project owners and contributors about how they're using PatternFly and our design documentation in their work to gain more insight into what kind of improvements we can look to make in the future. And we're looking to start workshopping and research sessions after Red Hat Summit.
And I was going to add that as we look forward to CY21 or to our next goals with PatternFly, we really want to invite you to help us shape this future and help us shape the direction in which we're heading. We really want to make the next iteration impactful and address a lot of the more pending issues that we've been hearing so far. So yeah, really invite you to all to join our contribute. Thank you.
All right, awesome, thanks. All right, let me share my screen one more time. Next up, I wanted to quickly solicit some feedback from the community about a topic our team wrestles with all the time. Let's see, to set it up for you. Currently, patternfly.org includes documentation for each of the components in the Patternfly component library, and each component page includes a number of tabs to organize information. Some simpler components don't have all these tabs that are pictured on the slide. These say React, React demos, HTML, HTML demos, and design guidelines. Some of the simpler components don't have all of those tabs, but many of the components have most or all of these tabs. The Patternfly team refers to the content of the React and HTML tabs as the component examples. And we are constantly debating how to organize our docs. So right now, by default, when someone navigates to a component docs, they land on the React tab. And we're not sure if people are aware that more complex examples, suggested use cases, and design documentation are hidden in different tabs. Slide. We try to reserve the example pages to be for the component's definition, API, and to demonstrate various features, something like demonstrating what happens as you change different props on the component or add different modifiers. I think the debate appears when we want to demonstrate how to set up certain interactions or how to set up like event handlers or how to establish relationships between components that are often paired together. The more complicated the example gets, like maybe there are more components involved, the easier it is to call it a demo. We just tend to run into a few issues like based on the types of questions the team receives, we're not sure that people are looking at or are aware that we have demos on the site. And we're not quite sure what to do when it's hard to demonstrate even the simplest definition of a component without context, like a form has many pieces to it. And so where the line is drawn between an example and a demo and how to make things easy to find when people have questions is something we're always evaluating and debating. So what I'd love to do is have a few questions. I'd love if anyone who has any thoughts on this call would pick a question, answer it. The questions are, did you know that we had the docs organized in the way I described? Do you look at component pages on patternfly.org? Are our navigation tabs in the component pages located and labeled clearly? And what have been your frustrations with how we have it all organized? So I'll let that sit for a sec. You can read the questions on the screen, and don't be afraid to unmute if you have any thoughts. I see Garrett has written in the comments, which is great. That also works for giving your feedback if people are more comfortable doing that. It says, as React sometimes lags behind, sometimes he's found himself pointing out things that exist in the HTML docs that aren't in React. And sometimes developers only look at the React docs. And sometimes React can't do what HTML does. Yes, that is something that we are constantly trying to work on. That is true about our documentation right now. Thank you. I'll give it a couple more moments. If you don't have any thoughts right now, or if you want to provide them after the meeting, that's great. I have a link to a form on this slide, but also I will link it in the follow-up email I send after the meeting. It's a form about this concept. So if you just answer a few questions, it gives you an opportunity to provide some of this feedback. We'd love to collect some data and some thoughts from the community to help us with our ongoing debate. Feel free to add any comments throughout the rest of the meeting. But what we'll do, since we do have a packed schedule, is keep it going, and that's totally fine. I'm going to pass the stage over to, I think it's Margot. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome.
Do you mind showing the slide?
Oh, sure.
Thank you. So I just wanted to share some of the design guidelines updates that we've had over the past few weeks. We have a bunch of new guidelines. So the first one is the filtering guidelines, which we basically revamped to be hopefully easier to follow and to use compared to the previous ones. We have some new usage and behavior guidelines, which is basically a place where we've decided to put some more general guidance on when to use certain components over others. So if you ever find yourself confused for, let's say, when to use a tooltip versus a popover, or a data list versus a table, this is where you would go to find that sort of broader information about different components and when to use them. The next new guideline is tabs, so we explain a little bit more on when to use which type of tab. Then we have new guidelines on expandable sections, number inputs, and then also some new guidance on writing 404 errors. And then some other smaller updates. We have the form guidelines where we've added some more content guidance, and then same thing for the alerts. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been working on these guidelines and really helping improve our design guidelines. That is pretty much all from me.
All right, thank you. Next is Marie.
Okay, can you please show the next slide for me? Thank you so much. Yeah, hey everyone. I just want to share a quick update on our design kit. We've added some new symbols to libraries such as slider, so you can select a value along a subjective range. Also, we've added marketing variation of Accordion. The next is item counts to the select dropdown, so all numbers are aligned to the right side. And last but not least, we've added expansion for visage steps. So you can create expandable step from now in a sketch. And then we got a request to update radio buttons. So symbols have been updated and they reflect the current implementation. And the next thing is that all the SVG symbols should be up to date. And the last thing I want to mention is that I created an epic for work on reducing nested symbols in our library. So if you are not comfortable with some symbols, I mean, they're difficult to reach, please reach out to me, or you can open an issue for some specific symbol and I will take a look at it. And that's all for me. Yeah, that's my update.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, I believe I'm going to hand it over to, Harald and his update from PatternFly Kotlin? I'm not even sure how to say it. I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Nicole. Thanks for having me. And let me first say about, a few words about myself. I work for Red Hat in the middleware team, and I'm doing a lot of work on management consoles. And right now I'm planning a new console for OpenShift for managing Wildfly. And this little framework or library I want to introduce and to show is the foundation of this new console. So it's all about writing PatternFly or developing this PatternFly using Kotlin. And let me share my screen. Do you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay, great. So I want to very quickly introduce Kotlin itself. So Kotlin is a language normally used on the server side, but recently they offer also support for browser. So they have a kind of a multi-platform strategy where they support Android. Usually may know that you can develop Android application in Kotlin. And they also have support for the browser. So that means that you can write in Kotlin and it's transpiled to JavaScript. So it can run in the browser. And there are some advantages of Kotlin. One is that it's static type. So you have great support for refactorings. If you have a large code base, that's really a big advantage. You have some sort of type inference, so that you know when you define a variable what kind of type it is. It has a very concise syntax, which you will see in a moment when I show some code snippets. Then you have this kind of DSL, which stands for a domain-specific language. So this is something which is very useful. It tries to you have a syntax which fits the platform, which is the browser here in the end, and then you have some features like null safety, immutability. So you don't have to spend much time thinking about whether this or that can be null or not. Kotlin has some kind of features built in which protects you from these kind of errors. Just to put some code on the slide so that you can get an idea what Kotlin looks like and how it behaves and what you can do with it. On the left side, you see you can have some kind of classes. So you have these concepts of types which can inherit one another. And it looks similar to what you maybe are used to from JavaScript, but compared to JavaScript, it's statically typed, so you always know what kind of type you are working with. And on the upper right side, you see this kind of domain-specific language which you have in Kotlin. So this UL is a function which you can call, and the body of the function is a code block, which is a mix of pure Kotlin code, like the definition of a list of strings and a for loop. And then you have again these domain-specific elements like list item. And this plus it is a special construct to use a string you're currently iterating over. And this produces in the end the HTML you see on the right bottom side. And the architecture of PatternFly Kotlin, of the project I'm working on, so that you get an idea how this all fits together, is that at the very bottom you have, of course, a browser which runs JavaScript. Then you have on top of that Kotlin, which is more or less a transpiler to transpile the Kotlin code you write into JavaScript. And then I'm using another open source framework, which is called Fritz2, which brings the reactive nature I'm using. So this is comparable to what you have in React, that you have kind of places where you hold your state, and whenever the state changes, specific parts of the DOM tree update itself automatically. And this is possible with this Fritz2 framework. And on top of that comes the framework or the library I'm working on, which is then called PatternFly Fritz2. And this is basically an implementation of the current PatternFly components in Kotlin. So we will see how this looks like in a minute. And then on top of that comes your application. So if we want to use this PatternFly Fritz2, currently there are a couple of components available. I'm trying to catch up as quick as possible. It's not fully, it's not all yet done. So there are a couple of components I need to implement. But yeah, there are still some available, and we will see how this looks in a moment. Just want to show one other slide so that you get a better idea how this reactive nature of PatternFly Fritz2 works. There's a concept of what is called store, and the store is where the state lives. So whenever the state inside the store changes, this reflects then the DOM tree. The DOM tree is updated, and the DOM tree, or the elements in the DOM tree, there are event listeners which are turned into handlers, and these handlers then modify the values in the store. And this is the cycle, how it works, basically. And here you see a little bit of example of how this can be used in your application. So on the left side, as you see, there are several chip components which are created. You can pass parameters to the chip if you want to have a read-only chip, and then you basically say what you want inside this curly braces, which is the code block. On the third example, for instance, you have the string or the text of the chip. You use this plus operator, and then you can react to specific events. Like here, you can react to a close event, which is turned into a notification. And this DSL, or this domain-specific language can include other components, like if you want to have a badge in your chip component, there's another function which gives you that. And on the right side is a little bit more complex example. Here you can see the usage of a store. So most of the components in PatternFly Fritz 2 work with these stores to hold the data. And here you have a store which holds a custom class or a custom type, which is just a class with two properties. And the chip group actually uses this store, has a display function which tells the component how to render instances of this demo class. So we are using the name to have the label of as a label of the chip. And then we have a badge, and the number of inside the badge is then just the length of the name. And finally, you populate the store with some data, and once you do that, it's automatically picked up by the chip group, and the data is rendered automatically. So if you are interested in this little project, feel free to visit some of the links. So I've put together some links to get to read more about Kotlin JS, about Fritz 2, the framework I'm using, and actually my library, which is hosted on GitHub. There are also some issues where you can see and track the current progress of the project. And finally, there's a showcase which I'm going to show. And this showcase reflects the current state. So I try to follow somehow the official PatternFly site. Here we have a little bit of kind of README, and then there's a little bit of how you get started, what you have to do to set up it locally, how to get in touch. And then most of the part is the components which are currently implemented. We can take a look, for instance, at the chip group, which you just saw in the example. So here you see some examples of chip groups, and for each demo, there's also a code snippet which shows you how this is implemented in PatternFly Fritz 2. So yes, feel free to visit the page in the showcase and to take a look around. And I have one demo, which is like a more complex demo, where I demonstrate the more complex components like the card view, the data list, and the table. So I'm using here randomuser.me, a site which offers some REST endpoints and some JSON data, which I turn into users. And then here you see the reactive nature of this Fritz 2 and PatternFly Fritz 2. So whenever I select here something, this is reflected in the other views as well, like in the data list and in the table. And the same goes for the sorting, for instance. So if I sort for first name, yeah, this should be reflected in the table list as well. The source code is linked here on the page, so you can take a look at that. And yeah, that's basically it. So I would be happy to get some feedback, and yeah, would even be happier to have some contributions, or people who are interested, just leave me a note, ping me. There's lots of components which still need to be implemented, so I'm looking forward to get some feedback and hopefully to get some contributions at the end. So thanks.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. When I send out the PDF of all the slides, you'll be able to access all the links that he showed and play with all of these demos and look at his library. That'll be awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
And next, we are going to pass it off to Jessie for an update about accessibility.
Hi, everyone. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So I picked some updates that are partially for kind of understanding how we can better support product. I've been noticing as I'm working more and more with product that there's different ways that these components can be customized, and we want to make sure that we are supporting that with accessibility as well. And so I've been noticing different areas in which we can improve that, but also some examples that we've improved on our side that might be potential pitfalls for you guys as well that I want to point out. So the first one I wanted to talk about was the application launcher. We noticed that in one of our examples here with router link that it wasn't keyboard accessible. And I started noticing this in product as well. And so I really wanted to start digging into what was going on. And what we realized is that the component prop was not really passing the right way. And actually, thanks to Katie's help, we just had to pass in the ref and make sure it was actually referencing the right thing. So that was one of those for application launcher. And then also with the demo, I had received feedback from our demo app that the app launcher demo wasn't fully keyboard accessible. And when I looked into it, I realized that it was actually the way we were handling tooltips. So, well, at least this way this example was handling tooltips. So if you want to add a tooltip to application launcher or dropdown or any dropdown like components, try not to wrap it in the tooltip. This can actually break the keyboard index, which can affect the keyboard accessibility. So use the actual prompt that we have for tooltip, and this will fix the keyboard accessibility for that. Another one that we've updated is NavItem. I think I'd shared something similar before, that with ours, we wanted to make sure that the tab index works when it's open and that you're not tabbing to it when it's closed. Well, if you customize that NavItem, I was noticing there was kind of an issue with that. So we just had to pass the tab index with clone children, which is kind of similar to that component issue. So we noticed that in multiple places and fixed that. And then the last one that I wanted to point out was our icon example. So on the icon example previously, it wasn't showing up on tab. So it wasn't keyboard accessible and also wasn't showing in a screen reader. And this is largely because icons often can be hidden. So in this situation, you would have that icon hidden, but it wasn't obviously interactive, and so therefore the keyboard and screen reader wasn't seeing it. A lot of times when you see examples of icons and keyboard or screen reader accessibility, they're on interactive items, and this can be really helpful because that's already kind of built in. So you're already knowing to interact with it, and so the screen reader or keyboard knows to interact with that item. But on just a plain icon like this, it's not going to know those things, so you would have to add that in. So this is a potential solution that you could have, where you have this icon, and you can wrap it in a span, add a label, and then also add that tab index, letting them know what that tooltip information is, and then also, hey, it's a tab stop. And this is a potential solution, but I also want you guys to think about how you're using these tooltips and how you're using all these things, because it's based on the user interaction. So if you had a bunch of tooltips all over the page, that might not be super user-friendly, both for mouse or keyboard. And you may not want to have multiple tab stops all over the page, so as they're trying to navigate, tooltips are coming up everywhere. So just consider what that might mean, both for mouse and keyboard users. So maybe if you have a bunch of these icons, maybe you would want to have a legend instead, something like that. So this is a potential solution if you just have this one icon. But if you're using multiple of these icons, maybe consider something else that might be a little more user-friendly. But yeah, I think that's the main updates, kind of wanting to talk about the ways that you might be able to customize these components for accessibility and also just examples in which this might affect you. So I think that's it.
All right, thank you so much. Now we are going to move on to our core update. I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully Michael's internet works well so he can walk us through the core updates. You there?
Hey, Nicole. Yeah, thank you. Hearing me okay?
Yep. Sounds
Okay, great. Yeah, I've got a questionable internet connection today, so please bear with me. Hopefully everything goes okay. So up first, we've got some updates to the Accordion component. We've added 2 new variations. One is bordered, so you get bordered items. Just a border is a separator between items. And then the other variation is adding use case large variation, so that increases the spacing and font size inside of the Accordion component. And this is an example of both of those in use. Okay, next slide. And another update to the accordion is support for multiple body elements. So previously you just had a body per item. Now you can specify multiple body elements, and that gives you the appropriate amount of spacing between multiple bodies in a single item. All right, the next one. And with the button component, we have two new variations, and there are a variation to two of our existing variations. So with the secondary button and the link button, you can now apply the danger variation to those two, and you get this appropriate styling for those variations that matches our existing danger variation. And next slide. With the card, sometimes you might have a need for making the card fill the height of its container. So assuming the parent of a card has an implicit or explicit height, you can now specify a full height variation for card, and it will fill the height of the parent. Next slide. And then sometimes you might also want a card with the basic card layout, structure, all of that, but not creating the basic box around the card. So similar to other components that we have with a plain variation, we now have a plain variation of the card component. It removes the shadow and the background color associated with the card. Next. And with the existing expandable variation of the card, the toggle icon is typically on the left of the card next to the title. There are use cases for putting the toggle on the right side of the card, and so you can now specify that as a variation as well. And this great new addition to the Clipboard copy component, and it's basically just an inline variation that has a couple of variants of it. And so this is for inline text. Instead of having a big block type of layout, you can place text and a copy action, and then additional actions if you wanted to associated with that. And so here are a few examples. You can use it on its own in a sentence. The text will wrap just like regular inline text. You can see that there. And then we also have a block variation of this layout so that when you specify that variation, the inline copy clipboard is on its own line, and it will appear below or on top of things that precede and come after it. And next. And a new component for including basic code snippets, or code block is a code block component. You can include code and actions in the top right. And then there's also a feature of this component that allows you to expand content. And so if there is more code in the block than there is available space, you can hide part of that code, and then there's a show more button that will toggle hiding and showing the additional content in the code block. And next. The context selector now supports items in the menu list as links. Previously, we only supported actions or buttons, so now you can specify a link here if the menu item takes you to a new page or updates the URL and is referenceable that way, that sort of thing. Next. The search input component now supports autocomplete. So as you're typing, you just get autocomplete suggestions that pop out in a menu below, and you can select. Also supports hint text in the text input and for the search input, and you can see that in the second example. Basically, just pre-populates text there to show you a potential match. And the next. With the select component, we now have an invalid state that matches other form control type components, such as text input and text area and form select. So when specified, you get the same basic layout as form control components that are in an invalid state, with updated ARIA roles, an icon, and then the red bottom border. And also in the, oh, I'm sorry, can you go back? Also in the select component, we now have the ability to specify an item count per item. And so this is typically going to be used in a checkbox select, and you can see the item count to the right. And this layout, we have added a new variation to allow children to wrap. So previously, it's a flex layout set to no wrap. Well, this just sets it to wrap if there's not enough space to display your items on a single row. And next. Lots of really great updates with the tabs component. So we now have a page section dedicated to placing tabs in the page main area or the main section. So similar to how we have page sections, like a generic page section for content, your tables, that sort of thing. Page section for breadcrumbs, tertiary navigation. We now have a page section for placing tabs, and it just applies the spacing needed to put tabs in context with other things in the page section. So that's available if you want to use it. Obviously, you can place tabs in other page sections or a regular page section if that works for your layout as well. We've also enhanced the insets with tabs to offer an inset called page insets, which when specified adds the left and right inset padding to tabs that matches the overall page component Chrome and page section spacing. And so it's 16 pixels padding or spacing on smaller screens and then 24 pixels on large screens. And so when specified, that updates responsively. And then with the tab content component, the panels that are used to contain content, when you click on a tab in the tabs component, you can now specify a padding variation. By default, those content sections do not have padding. Adding the padding variation also gives you the page level spacing so that the padding is 16 pixels on small screens and 24 pixels on large screens. And next slide. So we have a couple of new series of demos that would be great to check out. If you wouldn't mind, Nicole, clicking on the tabs demos. Take a look at this one first. And so it's basically just a page full of different tabs demos. And so this is used in all sorts of different contexts. You've got open tabs with secondary tabs, tabs, and so these are tabs in within tabs and then as secondary tabs, and then also just additional tabs inside of cards, tables and tabs, and so a lot of different use cases of tabs. Should example of just how you might include tabs in a product or application, and then we can go back to the slides and open the card demos. And then lots of really great card demos here. And so if you scroll down a little bit, the card view was existing. And then I scroll down just a little bit. We're going to go down to the details card. Okay, yeah, so this is where the new tabs, card demos start. And these are basically dashboard level card demos that you might put together in a dashboard configuration. And so this is basically just using existing PatternFly components, layouts, and utilities just to build out examples of how you might build different cards inside of a dashboard layout. And so these basically just serve as a template for how you might want to put these in your product. And so lots of really great examples and kind of advanced layouts and simple layouts using all the components, layouts, and utilities that we have in PatternFly. So there's a lot there. I'd encourage everyone to check it out and let us know if you have any questions or anything like that. And that's it.
Awesome. Good job. Good job to your internet.
Thank you.
All right. I believe we are to the React updates. And I'm just double checking so I don't catch anybody off guard. I believe Katie is going first.
Indeed I am. All right, let me share. Hello everyone. Got a couple of updates for this meeting. First, we're going to be starting with the dropdown where we have a new toggle variant called the badge toggle. So similar to like an icon-only toggle like kebab or the icon, this is a drop-down that behaves as normal, but instead of having text, it has a badge, which you can customize the text inside. So this example shows like a 3 for the 3 items that the current drop-down contains. So pretty simple update, gives you some more options. This is used later in my menu update, which we'll get to in a second. Second up, we have an enhancement for tree view, which we all added some functionality to control expand and collapse for all of the items. And this lies outside of the tree view, so you could see, you can click this button to expand everything, and all of the subfolders are expanded. I can collapse them all back down, and this will collapse all the subfolders as well. This button right here can lie wherever you want. It could be in like a toolbar to control like a view. So this is all separated and great. Last up for me is where the badge toggle is now being used as well. Is a new variant for our menu with drill down. So you can see there are 2 demos we have for drill down. First is kind of a basic demo, and the second will use the breadcrumbs. The first demo, you can see that the folders have an icon to show they can expand. And when you click on one, it'll kind of slide everything to the left and expand to the submenu. This can go any amount of depth. And if you click the header, it'll take you back out 1 level, all the way back down to root. For the drill down with breadcrumbs, this looks the same. Let's compare there. So instead of having a single level, it now shows you a breadcrumb kind of trail to where you are through the sub levels. So instead of just seeing 1 at the top, you'll see like you can go all the way back down to the top level, or you can use this new badge dropdown to represent intermediate like sublevels. So if you have like a really like deep drill down list, you can actually kind of condense the breadcrumbs so they don't take up the whole screen. And these breadcrumbs will let you go to any sub level as well. So you can go back 1 level, but you could also go back straight to the root. And these are all keyboard friendly and accessible. And that's it for me.
All right, thank you. Next is Tatani.
Oh, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the first update I have to share is an update to the radio component and also to the checkbox component. We added the body, an option to add a body to the checkbox and radio. So over here, you see that we have body and a body. So all you need to do to add that is to specify the body prop. And it's the same for the checkbox. So you just need to specify the body prop for that as well. Okay, and the second update I have to share is the field groups. We've added expandable field group or a non-expandable field group to the form. So here's a form, and right here you have your regular form group, and then here we have an example of an expandable field group, and you can nest them as well. So here is a nested expandable field group, and we also have the option of a non-expandable field group demonstrated over here. So we have 2 different classes to specify that. So you can either specify the form expandable field group to make it expandable, and then the form and then the form field group. So form field group and form expandable form field group expandable. Okay, and the last update is to the tree view. We already had support for tree view with a badge, which would just specify the count of children. So for instance, this was a count of 2 because I have 2 children. But now we have the option of customizing the badge content. So in this example here, you can just supply the prop custom badge content, and that will put whatever custom content you want in the badge. And that's it for me.
Thank you. All right, next is me. I have just a few React updates to demo. First is a new drawer color variant. So it gives a drawer a light gray background. Hopefully you can even see it. Depending on the contrast and how Blue Jeans is doing handling contrast, you might not even be able to see it. I can. So trust me, it's there if you can't see it. But it is, let's see, it says it gives the drawer a light gray background and can be applied by passing a light gray color value to the color variant prop. So in this example, I demonstrate how to apply it to the panel, which I can toggle on and off. You can also apply it to the content of the drawer or the section, which is the area at the top. So all these components take the new color variant prop. Second, one of the more highly anticipated features I worked on for the last release was the initial release of a tree table variant for our table. The instructions for wiring up the table to be a tree table are found alongside the example in the documentation. The result is that rows expand and collapse to expose or hide children rows, and each row knows what level it is at so that it can be offset enough to show a tree hierarchy. We've configured it to allow for optional checkboxes as part of the tree table, which the consumer can control the checkbox behavior. And we hope with the next release to include allowing optional icons to be displayed alongside each row as well. We also did wire things up so that the same features can be implemented using our composable table. We have also included configuration instructions in the example, but it basically is all the same features, so that's handy. We also are hoping to release the responsive solution for the tree table this upcoming release as well, so that's not quite in here yet. But we definitely encourage and accept all feedback on this enhancement while it is still in beta. Finally, for me, I also added a show and hide password button for the login form. So you basically pass this new, it's a is show password enabled prop to the login form component. And when you do that, you get this nice handy button that will toggle showing or hiding the password. And that's pretty straightforward. And that's all I have today. So I will now pass it off to Zach.
Hello. Let me share my my screen. Let's see. Boom. Can you guys see my web browser?
Yes.
All right. So this is not terribly complicated. The text area here auto resizes whenever you type more lines into it, and whenever you delete lines, it removes it. The implementation's a little more complicated, but hey, if you're a consumer, you just have to use it. So that's it.
Okay, great. And next I'll pass it off to Matt Carano to talk about what is coming up.
Yeah, do you want me to share out, or do you want to?
I can share, sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
There you go.
Okay, so these are some of the things that we're currently working on, so starting with design, we are continuing to work on a PatternFly dark theme. We made a lot of progress on that in the past month. You can see some of those designs linked to the design epic there. Also, continuing to look at integrating animation, some of the other sort of big items, refinements to catalog view, consider the showing and hiding the filter panel on the left-hand side, wizard enhancements, including collapsible substeps and an optional skip to finish button. We're looking currently at an expandable toast notification, which is something that the OpenShift team was interested in. And we've kind of had an ongoing work on topology view that Michael Saldoni has been leading up. And you can visit the PatternFly design workspace to see a complete list of work in progress. All these links are to active GitHub issues, so feel free to follow any of those issues that interest you, or comment on the issue if you have requirements, specific requirements, or feedback on what we're doing. Next up, core HTML, CSS, so things that are currently in progress there. We have masthead ongoing work on the masthead, or creating some new demos with the new masthead component, which hopefully we'll be in a position to show maybe next month. We have a new secondary horizontal navigation bar that we're going to be introducing, which is a kind of restyling of our secondary and tertiary horizontal navigation. We're updating the toggle group styling to differentiate that better from our primary button. Adding a view more action to select menus, and along with the dark theme work, kind of investigation in progress on how to better support theming in PatternFly. And again, those links are to the active issues, hopefully. And then on the React side, we have ongoing work on the log viewer, which again is hopefully something that we expect to be able to introduce within the next couple release cycles as a new beta component. Inline enhancement for copy to clipboard and code block. So Michael Coker showed both of those, the existing core implementation, so they are both available currently in core, but we are now working on React implementations of both of those. We're in the process of updating the API to the slider, so if you're currently using our beta slider component, a heads up on that. And the goal there is to make we are using we're not using the standard HTML range input. We created a custom slider because we weren't able to get all the visual customizations we wanted, but we've gotten some feedback from consumers that it would be great if we made that more consistent with the API of the standard range input. So we are currently in the process of doing that rework, and also we'll be introducing a new demo that shows the date and time range pickers shown together. So these are all things that you should be seeing coming into the next, hopefully in the next release, or the either this release or the May release. And there's a link there to the complete PatternFly feature roadmap, which shows all of our kind of GitHub backlog and maps those out over, say, the next 4 or 5 releases. So that's about it. Any questions? We're almost at the top of the hour, I see. So again, feel free to comment on and follow any of those issues that may be of specific import to you. Back to you, Nicole.
All right. We're really good at timing these guys. We've got it down to a science. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We don't have time for a live question and answer like I suspected, but I have the final slide on the presentation includes a handful of handy links. One to join our mailing list, one for the documentation structure survey that I would love to see lots of responses to. I also included a link to add the community meeting to your calendar. It will update whenever we have to move the community meeting like we did this past time. So that's handy to keep up to date with that. And if you have anything you'd like to present or discuss in future meetings, feel free to reach out to me. So I put my email address on the slide as well. I look forward to chatting again in a few weeks. The mailing list will receive the PDF with all the links from the presentation. It'll include the YouTube recording, link to the survey. Be on the lookout for that. If you don't get it, you're not subscribed to the mailing list. So subscribe. Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you, everybody. Bye.